like to welcome everybody to today's free workshop. We do these periodically through the year. This is just a follow-up to the one that we did this past weekend in person. So we do them in person and then we follow up with a virtual, and we record these so that we can share them on YouTube. So anybody who can't make it to either of these events can still get this great information. We would love for you to come to the next one. It is going to be on digital media and social media and your children. So that'll be in February 22nd. And then we have our open house in March. And then in April, we will have an additional one on reading and the joy of reading and the love of reading and how to share that with your children. So you're definitely welcome to all of those, and look for the follow-ups of those on YouTube shortly thereafter. So we are recording this, so just hold off on your questions until the very end. Also, and I'll stop the recording and answer all your questions. Also, I just wanted to let you know that this is an extremely long agenda, and so I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. I apologize. When we did it in person this past weekend, we couldn't even get through the whole thing. So I'm kind of go through this relatively quickly so that we can get to everyone's questions at the end. So I apologize in advance for that one. You can get the book, so I will talk all about that. So let me go ahead and start the presentation or the workshop, and then we'll go from there. So today's workshop is Positive Discipline. This is based on the book. Here it is here. And I got another picture of it on one of the slides. Waterfront, and so let me tell you a little bit about Waterfront Academy and myself ahead of doing the book. So my name is Melissa Rohan. I am the principal of Waterfront Academy. Waterfront Academy is a dual language English-Spanish Montessori school in the Catholic tradition. We start at age 3 and we go all the way up through 8th grade or age 12. We have over 10 years of experience. I have about 15 years of experience at this point. And I've worked with children of all ages. At one point we did have toddlers, so I also worked with the young ones too. We no longer are with, we no longer provide for toddlers. I should clarify that. But so Positive Discipline, which is the book that is pictured here that we are going to be talking about today. It's truly, I cannot recommend it more. Buy the book, read the book, have the book, refer to the book whenever you have a situation, have a conversation with your spouse, and you both read the books. And so you can have a starting point, a common starting point to discuss discipline in your home and with your children. So you can be aligned on that together. There is the book, paperback. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen it in a hardcover. I think it's only paperback. And then there are different iterations of this book. So there's Positive Discipline for the single parent, different discipline for the teenager, and et cetera, for the toddler, for whatever. They also actually just came out with a new version of the book, late fall, early winter of 2024, and that one is Positive Discipline in the Montessori Classroom. So again, highly recommend. Get the book, read the book, keep the book, refer to the book. There is also, I have heard from some of my parents, an audio version of the book, and then they came back and they said, we need to actually buy the book because they're driving and there's so much good information that, and they couldn't write it down because they're driving. One. Two, also, I would say that if you wanted to do both, you could do that. One of the parents recently asked if there was a workbook. I don't know about a workbook. If somebody finds a workbook, just let me know, because I would love to be able to let people know about this workbook. All right. So let's go to the next. The agenda, like I said, is packed. We're going to go through each of the chapters of the book, the first being the positive approach, basic concepts of positive discipline, the significance of birth order, a new look at misbehavior, logical versus natural consequences, focusing on solutions, using encouragement effectively, the family meeting, personality, how yours affects theirs, putting it all together, love and joy in homes and classrooms, and then finally we'll just do a closing and Q&A. Okay, and I'll turn off the recording before the Q&A. And oh, real quickly, the other thing is I want to say that even though that this book is packed with a lot of information, it is an easy read. You can definitely do it in one sitting. So I just wanted to say that as well. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the positive approach. So children need to develop strong perceptions about themselves and their abilities. They should be able to say things like, I am capable, I contribute in meaningful ways, and I'm genuinely needed. I can influence what happens to me. So that is something that we want in all of our children, obviously. And it's important, and the importance of this is intrapersonal, interpersonal, systemic, judgmental skills for long-term success. So when I look at everything that we do here, not just discipline, I look at it on the whole continuum, right? Because today they're small, tomorrow they will be ruling, the world potentially. And so the things that we do today are going to have positive or negative consequences in the future for your child. And so what we're doing is we're talking about having these strong perceptions about themselves, and this is something that they can carry on into the future. So the three main approaches for child care, adult-child interactions. It could be strictness, so that would be too much control. Some of the things that might be said while they're very strict is, while a parent is very strict or the adult is very strict, you do it because I said so, right? That's not going to have a great relationship or interaction between the adult and child. Permissiveness is another thing that we've seen. No limits. So do whatever you want. It's almost very dismissive. Do whatever you want. And then in positive discipline, it's kind and firm. And here's a word that we see a lot in Montessori: freedom within limits. Okay, and I feel like I talk a lot about that in both my Q&As as well as in some of the other workshops I've already done. Freedom within limits. So I'm always coming back to this positive discipline. So the 4 R's of punishment are resentment. So the child would be, this is unfair, right? It's unfair. Revenge, I'll get even. That's what they're saying in their head. I'll get even. Wait and they see. Rebellion, they'll just do the opposite, right? So this oppositional, once they go there, it's very hard to bring them back in. It can be done. It's never too late, but you don't want them to go that way. And then retreat, sneakiness or reduced self-esteem. I feel like we see a lot of that sometimes with adults when there's conflict and they'll just withdraw. That's where this is, right? This is what that's from. Let me just really quickly go over what we're talking about when we're talking about discipline. Obviously, there is the noun and there's the verb. Usually as parents, when I talk to them about discipline, they're thinking about the verb, but we're actually talking about the noun, that intrinsic, I'm going to do things because I want to internally, right? So discipline comes from the Latin word meaning follower of truth. True discipline helps children develop internal motivation and self-control. So that's what we're talking about today. So the 4 criteria for effective discipline, just so you can have this in your head while we go through the rest of these concepts. Is it kind and firm? Is it Does it help children feel belonging and significance? Is it effective long term? And does it teach valuable life skills? Super important. All of those. Really, not only in discipline, but everything that we do with children, we should be talking or thinking about these four things, so that whatever we're doing has them in mind and their future and what's good for them in mind. So the basic concepts of positive discipline. 4 steps for winning cooperation. Express understanding, acknowledge feelings. So I see that you're upset. I see that you're frustrated, right? Those, and then you give them a word, and once they have a word for what they're feeling, they're like, okay, yes, and then they can move forward. All right, show empathy. I understand that. That makes sense to me. I understand that you're frustrated. That makes sense to me. Okay. You don't want to condone the behavior, but you want to understand it, right? So you don't want to say, yeah, I can understand why you hit your sister. No, I can understand why you're frustrated, right? That makes sense to me. Share your perspective and keep it calm and kind, right? So here's what I'm seeing. Let me know if this makes sense to you, right? This is something you could say to the child. I'm seeing that you're trying to do X and it's not working out, right? Maybe we can talk about ways that we can problem solve this differently, okay? And of course, make your words appropriate for the child, right? Like you would use more advanced words with a bigger child or easier words for a younger child, right? Meet them at their level. And then invite solutions. So what do you think we could do differently next time, right? These are things that you can do. So some core beliefs about child behavior, reinforce. So a child's primary goal is to belong and feel significant. That's every human, right? So if we can start there, we can go from there. And misbehavior often stems from discouragement or unmet needs, okay? So that's one that I talk about with parents all the time because they will put their own perspective or their own lens on a child who's not there yet, right? So, my child is being manipulative. No, your child isn't old enough to be manipulative, right? So this is just a response to blah, 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 right? So making sure you're not putting your own perspective on something and meet them again down at their level, and understand that usually it's a signal of something bigger and deeper, okay? So the 3 R's of recovery from mistakes. And I think this is super important for so many reasons, okay? Recognize, wow, I made a mistake, okay? That's all you need to say. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Reconciliation. I'm sorry. And then resolve. How can we fix this together, right? I'm human. You're a human. We're all human. Your child is human. And as humans, we learn from our mistakes, but we need to acknowledge when we make them. And your child needs to see that you do, in fact, make them as well. Because in your child's eyes, you are everything. You are perfect and you do everything right. And they need to see you as somebody who is willing to acknowledge their mistakes, apologize for their mistakes, and make amends and learn from their mistakes. And so children need to see that in you so that they can do that themselves. Okay? So those are, oh gosh, So many important things. I get too excited. I'm very excited talking about these things. They're so important. Okay, so I overshot it. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the significance of birth order. And I think this is really important because if you have, okay, um, you're in your own birth order in your own family. You might be a single child, or maybe you're a middle child, whatever. And then you have a child or children of your own, and that makeup is going to be different than your experience, right? And then each child is going to have their own experience going through life as well. And so there are some trends that kind of thread through all families that that can be identified. And so let me just really go over this really quickly and then kind of bring it to why it's important to the discussion today. The oldest child tends to seek perfection and control. The youngest child may use charm or manipulation for significance. The middle child often feels squeezed and compensates by standing out. So an only child has similarities to an oldest, but often less intense. Okay. So the reason that is important is because as I said before, you're always going to meet each child exactly where that child is. And understand that each child is different. So the expectation for one child is going to be different than the expectation for a different child. And so just keeping all of that in mind, and also something that might look like a misbehavior to you is really just the personality of the child that you have. Okay, so keeping all of that in mind when we look into further positive discipline. So a new look at misbehavior. What is misbehavior? Misbehavior reflects unmet needs, skill deficits, or discouragement. We kind of already talked about that really quickly. Misbehavior isn't just about children. It often involves adult responses too. Okay, let me say that one again. Misbehavior isn't just about children. It often involves adult responses too. So especially with the children under the age of 6, one of the things that I talk to our teachers about and our parents about quite a bit is that if you have a misbehavior in the classroom, I look at 3 things first, right? I look at the adult in the room for sure. I also look at the environment, and I look at the materials or toys that are in the room. And so if we need to make a change there because we see a repetition of the same misbehavior, I address those things. It's very rarely it's the child. It's very rarely the child. I want to say never, but I mean, like, most often it's one of those 3 things, and that'll just resolve the situation pretty darn quickly. And so just keeping that in mind. So the 4 mistaken beliefs or goals of misbehavior. So undue attention, I need to be noticed. Misguided power, I'll show you who's in charge. Revenge, if I don't belong, I'll hurt back. And assumed inadequacy, I can't do it, so why try? So the logical versus natural consequences. This is something that we talk about for sure. It's definitely described in detail here, and so with a lot of examples. So go to the book. I think you'll really enjoy this chapter on logical versus natural consequences. So what we often see with our parents is parents will say, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to take away their favorite thing. Okay. And quite frankly, X, Y, and Z have absolutely nothing to do with the thing that you have just threatened to take away. And so it's not going to work out for you. It really isn't, right? So, I mean, you can keep doing it. It's not going to work out for you. So we like to talk about natural consequences. And what those look like, right here, you can see they're related, respectful, reasonable, and revealed in advance. Okay, so here's an example. You're getting ready to go. It's cold outside. We're in the middle of January. It's cold. We're about to get snow. It's cold outside, and your child doesn't want to wear a coat. All right. It's not 10 degrees out. It's 40. All right. And, so that going into this. And you've already have been taking these courses. You're a Montessori family, and you're like, I've already offered Joe his red coat and his blue coat. I gave him options, and he is just not wearing a coat. I gave him time to make that choice, but quite frankly, we don't have any more time left. All right, so you're like, all right, you don't want to wear a coat. Here's the related consequence. It's going to be cold outside, okay? And you're going to get cold. So it's related. It's respectful. You said no. I'm going to respect your no, okay? We're going to go with that. It's reasonable. You know what? I know you're going to get cold. I know that you're not going to be out there shivering. So, okay, I'm willing to let you get cold so that you can learn from this mistake. And you go ahead and let them know in advance, you know what? I'll let you go outside without your coat on, but I want you to know you're going to get cold. And I don't have a solution for you when that happens. Okay? So you've worked through all of those things. You know that there's no imminent danger, right? Because we're not talking about 10 degrees. We're talking about like just under 50. And he's gonna get cold. Joe is gonna get cold. So, and then he's gonna be asking for that coat, and we won't have this problem again. Okay. So we also do this a lot in Montessori. Everybody asks us why we have glass, because we've told them how to work with the materials. Sometimes they just don't want to do it our way. The glass falls, it breaks. It's related, it's respectful, it's reasonable, and it's revealed in advance. And so then the child has the consequence of helping us, clean up the mess. Usually they're holding the dustpan and we're sweeping the pieces in, right? So they've worked with us on fixing the situation. And there's other things that we could talk about, like, water and the water spills, and they have to clean up the water, things like that. Okay. So focusing on solutions, this is also really important, especially now we're more talking about children who are over 6, right? And this is something that you'll see in an elementary classroom a lot, is when you see a problem, right? Usually at this age, it's between 2 children. Of course, at home, it might be any number of things, right? So you work through problem solving with them, asking them curious questions. Okay, so I might say to child A, tell me what happened. And then I talk to child B and I'm like, tell me what happened. And then it's like, okay, well, how do you think so-and-so feels? And then go to the other child. Okay, how do you think so-and-so feels? Okay, like, how could we do this differently? Okay, how can we help each other out? Right? And I ask all of these questions, and maybe next time we could, how would we handle the situation, right? And so I would ask all these types of questions. And so you're helping them problem solve so that in the future they can do this independently without an adult. Okay. Also, real quickly, let me go into timeouts. So timeout isn't a punishment, right? Like, we're not putting children in a timeout as a punishment. It's what we do is we'll put them to the side, in a space that they're safe so they can sit and think, cool down, reset, focus on solutions. And we work with children ahead of an event like this, of creating their own space to have that time, right? So we're not facing corners or anything like that, right? Like, this isn't of the 1980s. This is like, hey, like, let's try and figure out like how we can calm ourselves down, how we can come up with a solution, right? And so those are some things that we can do in advance of an event with our child. And then they know as well, like if they get we've seen that with children, when they get frustrated and upset, they'll just walk over to their space on their own without being asked by a parent or an adult, do you want to go to this space? And you don't have to call it timeout. You can call it whatever you want to call it. We call it a peace table in some of our classrooms, and a peace corner in other classrooms, or meditation space in other classrooms. So we have even different names for it in the different classrooms, right? So, and it's something that as a community they come up with on their own. So another thing is and more examples of some curiosity questions is, what do you think caused this problem, and what can we do next time? I wrote those in my notes, so I wanted to give those there. I kind of skipped over them pretty quickly. So using encouragement effectively. Again, in the book, she does a wonderful job of really kind of going through all of this, but let me quickly go over this. So you love your child, obviously. And so when you're loving and you're showing all kinds of love to your child, you can absolutely say things like, you're the best, you're so smart, you're, blah, blah, blah. Fine. That is one of the love languages, and you should absolutely use that as a way of sharing your love with your child. Absolutely. But when you are talking about discipline, specifically, instead of saying you're smart, I would challenge you to say something along the lines of, you worked really hard on that, right? How does that make you feel? I'm proud of you. You must be proud. Do you feel proud? Like those types of, or how clever that you figured that out, right? Like, so those types of encouragement words versus a blanket praise, right? So just keep that in mind. And the children, they respond very well. In fact, I would say that they respond better with the encouragement, because then they want to keep doing that thing. Whereas when they get that praise, it's kind of like, all right, I got it. Don't need to do anymore. We're good. And so we don't want to be in that situation. Then let me go to the next slide. Here we are, the family meeting. So this is everything in a family. In the classroom, we do a version of this, and she talks about this beautifully, but at home, it's everything. And in my head, it needs to be very regular, right? You have a dinner as a family every night, or breakfast as a family every morning, whatever it is, and you're just connecting as a family without screens, and you're able to, I don't know, be light and joyful and just have fun and be a family, be a community. In these family meetings, that again should happen regularly, so that what you don't want to do is you don't want to wait till your children or adolescents and then you start bringing in the family meeting. You need to create the expectation that this is going to happen, and it's a wonderful thing that happens. So in a family meeting, it doesn't have to be serious. It could be like, hey, what are we going to do this weekend, right? Aunt Sally's coming to visit us. We want you to participate in putting together, some some ideas that we can do with Aunt Sally, right? So that's a family meeting right there. Or we're going on vacation to blah, blah, blah. What are we going to do on this vacation? What do you guys want to do? Right? So having a family meeting so everybody can get on the same page on something is really, really important. And then when the big things come up, because they do, you can, as a family, have a respectful conversation about how we're going to move forward, right? So what that looks like in a classroom that we're already doing, right, is we have a regular meeting, and in the meeting we talk about everything we like this week, what we want to accomplish next week, what we're proud of this week, like all of these things. And then every once in a while we are like, hey, we've noticed that the boys' bathroom has consistently not been great. What can we do to make sure that the boys' bathroom looks great, right? Or I don't know, whatever. We've noticed that like we're having trouble transitioning from work to lunch, whatever it is, right? You've already created, and that's in the classroom, but at home, you've already created this beautiful thing that's happening on a regular basis that they can anticipate is going to happen, and these wonderful things happen during this event. But sometimes these things pop up that is just part of life, and we're going to talk about those as well. And so that's the family meeting. Personality and how yours affects theirs. And this is so true. And there's I've been seeing recently a whole lot of really great studies that talk about this specifically. And so there's, you should take some time with your spouse to reflect on, or on your own, right? Your personality and your priorities and how they affect your parenting approach. And encourage in that conversation with your spouse to examine triggers and habits, right, that are getting in the way of you moving forward in the positive discipline or whatever discipline plan you have. Like hopefully you take positive discipline, but whatever it is, as a family, as parents, both you and your spouse, come up with that plan and say, hey, like we have this plan, but I've noticed that these moments, you're not following the plan, right? Okay, so what can we as a team do to make the necessary needs, right? And maybe that's like, I'm too upset right now, I need you to handle this. Or I'm too upset right now, I need a moment to breathe, and then I'm going to circle back because I can't, whatever I'm going to say when I'm upset, like when the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's out, like you can't take it back in. And so the same thing here, right? Like if that's something that's triggering you to not follow your plan that you and your spouse have put together on disciplining your children, then you need to make space for you getting what you need as a human so that you can move forward in a positive way. Okay, so just keeping that in mind would be a game changer, I'm sure, for you and your spouse. And so putting it all together, when you, and hopefully you start this younger, but it's never too late. But once you get this rhythm of using positive discipline in your discipline parent plan within your family, you're going to start everybody's going to be able to take cues and understand what needs to happen. And it doesn't need to be like the the stare, right? Like everyone knows about the mother's stare, and then like sends shivers down your spine, right? Like that's not what we're talking about here. But there could be some nonverbal signals like, hey, you know what? We have 5 minutes it's time to circle, hold on, you need to make, it's time to circle up so we can go, right? Like those are ways that we can communicate with each other, right? Like on the playground, for example, like, hey, time to circle up. We got 5 minutes. Time to go, right? Time to go. You can't see me. My hand signals. Time to go. There we go. And so those types of things are you're at home and you got to get in the car. You have 5 minutes, right? You don't need to say anything. They know. And so because you've got that rhythm and they know what the expectations are. Putting it all together. So like I said, the nonverbal signals, the choices you wear your red shirt or your blue shirt, solution focused languages, right? Especially when you're talking to older children. Managing conflicts, right? So we know that there's the conflicts that happen, and so we're going to talk through those. We're going to encourage independence. So, they can do it on their own. We've given you enough time to do that, right? And so at the end of the day, we're building positive relationships through love, patience, and learning from mistakes. What we do is never as important as how we do it. We see mistakes both in ours and our children's as opportunities to learn and grow. And with that, I want to thank everybody for coming. We did that in actually pretty good time, so we had time for a Q&A. If you have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And again, regarding resources, a few things I want to put to put on your radar. One, we do have a lot of blog articles, some of them having to do with this on our website, and we can put those in notes for you. Of course, there is the book that I just mentioned, plus the different iterations of that book that are very specific to different scenarios or situations. And we have our YouTube channel, which this is going to, so you can also view all of these videos as often as you like. And you can share it with others. We'd appreciate for you to like and share, right? And subscribe. But there are a lot of that. And then of course I can be a resource as well. So if you have any questions, just shoot me a message and I'm happy to respond and help you with the specific need that you might have. So thank you again for your time. I know this was really quick that we went through all of these things. I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions. And just wanted to end with a quote that children do better when they feel better.